Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Wonderful Webinars. We are in our August installment, super exciting. And this week we have Robert Ball, who has traveled the world, is incredibly passionate about safari and wildlife, and is an activist and conservationalist. He's a good friend of Susie's, and she is here to chat with him and get the feedback on his favorite things he's seen and done, things that have changed his life, and any messages he wants to share about potential conservational work and activism work in the future. So I'll let Susie and Rob take it away.
Thank you, Heather, and welcome, Rob. It's so great to have you on the program today. How's everything going?
Excellent. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So I am dear friends with Rob, and we have been spending a lot of time lately talking about his activities and his travels around the world. He's a passionate wildlife photographer. He's a steadfast conservationist and has some programs that he's been pursuing for a number of years in several countries in Africa. And I'm going to be asking him lots of questions about those today. He's also an educator, and because he's a photographer, he believes strongly in educating through the use of photography because not everybody's blessed to be able to travel the world, but it's important that everybody knows what's going on a global scale when it comes to like preservation of species and other issues that face the continent of Africa and other places around the world. And he's a philanthropist, so he's got programs that he's started out of the goodness of his own heart. He also supports other entities that are doing good work in conservation areas too, but he has projects that he's running of his own, and I'm going to ask him in detail about those today. So let me get Rob talking real quick, though. Again, welcome, Rob. And I know you and I talk a lot, and I know your story, but not everybody does. So if you can just kind of bring everybody up to speed about what got you traveling, where all you've been, and how you came to fall in love with Africa would be great.
When I first started traveling, that was with Scripps Institution of Oceanography as a U.S. Merchant Marine. And one of my first trips was to Cape Town, South Africa. And that was in 1987. And the legend goes that once the dust of Africa hits your boots, it never leaves you. And it truly affected me big time. So I've had the opportunity to not only go all through South Africa, but up into Pretoria, Port Elizabeth, Johannesburg, Durban, especially a lot of time in Durban because our ships used to go there and we'd spend at least 3 months at a time in the shipyards. So every opportunity that I got to get out, that's exactly what I did every single time was go out on safari. And I absolutely enjoy being out there. To me, it's like, certain people have their rush in life. That is my biggest high and my biggest rush is being out there and seeing these animals in their own native habitat. And it's some of the things that I've gotten to see and do. Just I can't even. I'll try and explain as best I can, but it's absolutely amazingly beautiful.
So I
So
don't I don't know if this is out of order, as far as the flow of what you want to do, but there's an amazing picture of you interacting with elephants right here. And I know there you go, another one coming up with the cheetah. Can you just tell us about these days or this day?
yes, that was when we were in the shipyard in Durban. So that particular picture is 3 hours northwest of Durban in a certain park out there. I never like to give names of parks because of rhinos and things like that. But that particular day, we had gone out and our guide, we'd gone past a ranger out in the field. They wear green and they just stay with certain animals. And we went by, our guide goes, and we went around a corner and he goes, "What are you comfortable with feeding or petting the elephant?" I'm like, heck yeah. So all of a sudden around the corner, here comes the elephant. And so he goes, okay, just go ahead and step out nice and easy. And he cut up an apple. And as you can see, these elephants were just as mellow as can be. They are such beautiful, intelligent animals. And you can see in my face about lost it. It's like, okay, you take me now. This is just absolutely beautiful. And so I got to feed him and just pet him. Now, what you're not seeing is behind me is the guide, the ranger. And he's like dressed in green. He stays with them at all times out in the bush. And that was probably one of my most beautiful experiences is to pet such a majestic creature in his home, no surroundings, no zoos. It was just oh my gosh, an emotional high for sure.
That had to just be breathtaking and something that you'll never forget. I'm so jealous. and yet and yet we can't have everybody in the world have that experience. So how blessed you are to have that, right? But we cannot bring these creatures in that close of contact with everybody who chooses to visit Africa. So I don't want guests watching this to think that this is a normal,
No,
activity that you would get. It's certainly nothing that we would promote, but Rob spends a lot of time interacting with rangers in particular. And so he gets access to do some things that the average visitor to Africa, different parts in Africa, would not. Now, Rob, the tusk on this elephant looks to have been removed on purpose. Is that true, or did it break off?
no, it probably broke off. I don't know if a lot of people know, but an elephant, like we're right or left-handed, they're right or left tusked. So they may, it may have been digging at the time or, something of that nature, not real sure. But
Okay.
that's kind of my thought process on that.
Okay. And then I just want to follow up with, you said that in this particular region of Africa that there's a set of rangers assigned to these specific animals, and that's part of this anti-poaching ongoing issue with these endangered species, right? And so
Exactly.
is there like two or three, people that are assigned to each herd of elephants that they rotate, but somebody's with them all day, every day?
For the most part, yes. In this case, it was just one ranger. So he'll check, he'll look over this particular herd in this particular area.
Wow.
And you could see in the guy's face, it was just he absolutely loves what he does. I
Of
mean,
course.
it's these guys aren't paid hardly anything, if anything, but to go out there and walk amongst them. Oh my gosh. I mean,
That's
we would
incredible.
all just just
I get
give our
excited
right arm to that.
when they come by our trucks. I mean, I get thrilled. I can't even imagine like interacting with them. So thanks for that picture. How about the cheetah? Can you switch over to the cheetah picture?
Basically the same area. That was probably a few kilometers away. And what that particular cheetah had our guide had known because it had gone through rehabilitation and it had gotten kind of used to people a little bit, which isn't exactly a good thing. The cheetahs are well known for being you can partially domesticate them, but that's the last thing we ever want to do. So
Right.
when we got there, he asked, "Would you be comfortable with, you know, petting the cheetah or touching the cat?" And it's like, I'm a huge cat fanatic, so I'm like, "Heck yeah, let's go!" And so he ran me through what to do first, how to handle the animal. In other words, come behind him, and when I was petting him, this is what blew me out. As soon as I started petting him, it was just like a domestic cat. You heard the purring and everything. I said, "Oh my God, this is so beautiful." And they're very wiry skin. And I don't know if people know this, but cheetahs are the only of the big cats that do not have retractable claws.
Right.
So what the guide had mentioned is if he rolls towards you, just back out nice and easy. Don't try and let him, you know, hug you or anything like that because it, possibly even tear you up. But that
Yeah.
was the most sweetest cheetah and experience. Again, look in my face. It's like tears are almost coming down. You're just like, okay, you can take me now. This is absolutely beautiful.
Oh, that's so great. And how long ago was that visit that you were on that particular trip?
That was 2011.
Okay. So quite a while back. All right.
Yes.
And then what was that next picture, Heather, that you just got to?
That was just recently. That was in early June. I was in Zambia and really good friend of mine was my guide. And I just absolutely love this man. Manny, when you get a chance to see it, love you, brother. But he found us this particular kill. And what you see is just one lion, but there's three more in the background.
Yeah.
And so that was a very, very fresh kill. And so to have these privileges to see this stuff, and yes, we got pretty doggone close, but I also have a really, really good camera.
Yeah.
So, we give the animal the respect and, don't crowd in on them. That's something that Susie and I'll go over later.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Oh,
Now this one, that was a huge rush. So there's actually a full video of this. There was actually two males, two big guys like this, and they were walking together when and we were headed back to the camp. We were almost to the camp. And so we saw these two, and Manny knew how, the track they were going to take. So he got up ahead of them, and we just parked in front of them. They literally come straight at us. I mean, you're looking into his eyes and you can see and feel the power. And you knew that he knew it. He knew he was the king. And you're just like, holy mackerel. So it's one of those things we'll talk about later is when you're in the game vehicle and you see something like this, you stay as quiet, you don't make a peep, you just watch. And so I held the camera and did not move. And he literally came up and brushed against the vehicle. I mean, I could have literally touched him, but it's you have that respect. You don't dare do anything like that. But it was probably one of the most magical ones that I've had of a big cat coming straight at you and didn't give a darn about your existence. It was just
Right.
walked on by.
I've seen that video. It's a little harrowing, and but I admire so much that you have that experience. It's amazing, and the fact that he was on a night drive is also an uncommon thing in Africa. Most of the parks will shut things down around sunset, but Rob again is connected so well to the rangers in these various countries that he gets access to do special activities like this. So good on you.
Thank you. And I don't take any of that for granted. I know I'm very privileged to do this. And the best part is I get to share these pictures with you guys and give you an idea of what it's like. And, that's the power of photography is one picture can tell 1,000 words.
Look at this beauty.
That was in Zambia in 2021 during COVID. And I was putting in a large solar system in the Nasefu region at a camp. And so this was a morning drive. We got out there, and leopards are one of my favorites of all the big cats. I mean, tigers are my biggest favorite, but that's not Africa. But he was just sitting up in the tree, just lounging, kicking back. I wish I have another shot of him where I love it, and Susie does too. When you come up on him, and their arms or their paws and everything are just hanging down. It's a beautiful thing to see for sure.
Yeah, I have several fetishes of animals in Africa. One of them is paws, of the big
Yes.
cats. One of them is the little pom-poms on the ears or on the horns rather of female giraffes. And the other
Right.
is the way that a zebra's tail looks like it's braided. It's not, but it looks like it's braided in the back. So yeah, so I'm always on the watch for those to capture those things.
Right. That one was this year. That was probably one of my favorite leopard shots. So we knew that he had just made a kill that morning. What it was he was kind of in the foreground, and it went out into a grassy knoll where two impalas were fighting over all the females. Well, he took advantage of them not paying attention to him. He bolts in as fast as he could, and it literally at the last milliseconds when they broke off, and he got one of them. And so he had already taken it up in the tree and was feeding on it before we got there. But when we got there, he was already on the ground, and we just kind of watched him for a little bit. And he got into this area, and he was just sitting back, lounging and everything. And I did not take my eye off him with the camera. I was just stuck in the lens, watching and watching for just this opportunity. And sure enough, you could see he was going into the on. So I just had it on speed, and I was just like taking the shots. And that's one of my favorite because that's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful shot. Nice. Oh,
This is also this year in Zambia also. There's a lot of baboons and monkeys out there, but to see the young like that and how how they're very family oriented, obviously, and it was just really cute. I thought that was just a beautiful shot.
they they roam around and have territories, and their group sizes can be so large sometimes. I've rolled up on families that are probably multiple hundreds in size, but always the babies are what steals the heart of every visitor, right? The babies and the big males, right? The big males are so huge and so kind of ferocious, but it's these little ones, they're either playing with each other or they're riding on mom's back or clinging to her stomach. But anyway, they warm your heart. And I've got some of the cutest staying baboon pictures too. So thank you for including that one though. That's super sweet.
Yeah, real quick on the when you're in the bush and you're trying to find a leopard or something like that, they'll give off a type of warning sounds that sounds like they're saying Raku. So it's like Raku, and they all start going off, and you can hear this from a distance. So you know that there's a predator in the area. So they're key and also, paying attention to your surroundings and what's out there. And they'll give you a hint too. If they're nice and mellow like this, you know that there's no predators around and they're just foraging, just having a good time.
Exactly. So I don't think the next picture, I think that's the next section, Heather. So put a pin in that one for just a minute. And I want to just mention that the reason that I asked Rob to come and show about his past trips and talk about some of the different programs that he's got running right now, some of the different passion projects that he's got going, is because Rob largely believes in the same style of travel that I do. And that is something that you've heard on past webinars, and anybody who chooses to travel with me or with Wanderful Tanzania will learn that I believe very strongly in something called intentional travel. And in a nutshell, that just means to kind of have a sense of the place that you're going before you go. Learn a little bit about the country and the people, the history, the culture of the places that you go. And I'm not just talking Africa. It's anybody can do this every time you travel. It just makes for a much more rich travel experience. But it also allows you to then travel in such a way that you leave the smallest, like US, entitled traveler footprint around. And it encourages people to try and also then find a way to not leave any footprint in their wake other than that of positivity and compassion, and to help lift up the country that they visited. And so I embrace that style of travel every time I go. And I know that Rob does too. And you're going to hear about his heart for Africa and his heart for these kind of passion projects. In the past couple of years, 8 years, the Wanderful Tanzania trips have given us the opportunity to support this beautiful orphanage in the town of Usa River in the country of Tanzania. We also have worked on local water projects, and there have been a whole series. I think there have been 9 different scholarships that we've given that helped put young people through various kinds of training, a lot having to do with the safari industry, but also we've done some work with, IT or a pharmaceutical person studying pharmacy, I guess is the best way of saying that. And and anyway, some scholarships for education for folks there. So it's not huge organizations like the World Wildlife Fund or this other organization that Rob's going to speak about later, but it only takes one drop to make that ripple effect of goodness as you travel. And so that's what I want to ask Rob more about right now. I know that you've given me the rundown of the various projects, and I don't know that I can keep them all straight because you're very prolific in the amount of philanthropy and things that you're doing. You've already mentioned installing a huge solar project in another country in years past. But recently you've mentioned to me a few things, and I kind of want to go through them one at a time, if you don't mind. Sure. The first one you touched on a little bit already, which is safari etiquette. And I think your desire to do a little bit of education for people getting ready to go on their trips, how to behave and how, the things to do and not do while you're on safari. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, it's a few things. So it's not only etiquette in the game drive vehicle, but also etiquette in the camp. So when you get to, I almost say 100% of these camps that I've ever been to, is they'll walk you through the do's and don'ts, how to conduct yourself. Because a lot of times in these camps, you have wild animals coming through there. It could be the baboons, it could be different kinds of monkeys, it could be elephants, it could be giraffes, it could be, literally doggone anything. So really pay attention to what your hosts are telling you, and just basically go out and have fun. But remember, this isn't a zoo. They're not caged. It's as real as it gets. And when you get into the game drive vehicles, you'll find out that your guides, these people live there. They're highly educated. And the more fun you're going to have is the ones that you'll sense the true passion. And so when you're in these vehicles, pay attention to what's going on. So when you have like that lion situation, you don't move, you don't gasp, you don't go, oh my gosh, anything like that, because all those movements are key factors to those animals. Even elephants. I mean, you think that something may be, really mellow at the moment, but you don't know what's going through his head, and you don't know what he may have experienced with people in the past. So listen to your guide. Don't move around a lot. I mean, go ahead and get yourself comfortable to take your pictures and everything, but really kind of keep your voice down. And one key thing that I ask is, please don't drink it when you're out there. What I mean is, don't go out there and think it's fun to have a few beers and all this, and because then I've seen some of the ugly things that can possibly happen. And you're out there to have a good time and enjoy nature. It's a rush when you're out there. So I mean, I don't drink at all, but to me, that is a huge, huge high. Is when you got, like a whole herd of elephants, or you got lions coming at you, or you get to witness a cheetah running for his prey. It's you're just in awe of the whole situation. So,
It's a natural high for sure. Absolutely
oh,
is.
it
Um,
is.
when just to speak to that, I always coach my groups too. When you're at camp in the evening, you can have that glass of wine, that glass of whiskey, whatever it is. Everybody's going to do that. And once in a while, maybe every third day during our lunches, we might have a beer that everybody can have a beer. But I have been around the people that you're talking about, Rob, where it's a bachelor party or something like that. Number one, they're 10 octaves or 10, not octaves, but 10 decibels too much noise everywhere you go. And it takes the whole safari vibe away from everybody else. So you're right. Like, keep your senses about you. You're in a wild place, and you're going to get a natural high because you're seeing the most incredible stuff in the world. You don't need to add anything to that to enhance that. So thank you for that.
Also, real quick, one of the also key factors,
Mhm.
and I've made this mistake myself after years of being out in the bush, is you do not go out of that, whether you're in a tent, a chalet, or whatever, you don't go out at night. You just don't do it, because you
No,
do not know what's on the edge of that bank, or hanging out in the tree, or actually around the corner. So that's,
right.
for me, that's a huge factor to point out also.
That's why those camp rules have to be obeyed and never disobeyed for any reason. They give you mechanisms to get the attention of the support staff if you have an emergency. But short of that,
Yes.
all of the tents that we go to at least are en suite. All your facilities are in the tent. There's no reason you should leave that tent until it's light again outside and they've given the all clear in the camp. So they do that for a reason. And it's because of what you said earlier. You don't know what's walking through your camp at night. And I have got to tell you, I don't know that there are any animals on the list of animals in Africa that haven't come through one of my camps in all the safaris that I've been on. They are all there. I've had lions licking the water off my tent, the condensation off my tent at night. So they're there. But when you're in the tent, you're safe. And so just follow the rules. That's perfect. Another thing that you have told me that you're doing is you are really working closely hand in hand. And I think this is mostly Zambia and Kenya, from what I remember. But you're working to coach guides and rangers on prioritizing the comfort of animals, controlling the crowds, the things that you see that are becoming problematic in certain, and I have to say, certain times of year and in certain pockets of the parks, right? It's not everywhere in the park, it's crowded, but in certain times of year in certain places, it can get a little overwhelming with crowd size. So how are you addressing that with them? Like, what kinds of conversations are you having?
Well, that was something, recently that happened. I was in Kenya, and we'd come across an absolutely beautiful scene where it was a large grassy knoll area, and it tapered up to kind of like a hillside. And down at the bottom part was a nice sized herd of, Cape buffalo. And you saw up towards the top this absolutely beautiful black maned lion. You knew he was in his prime. He was just beautiful. And the way that he just came across, nice and mellow, and if you watch him and you pay attention to the winds, you'll always see that wind is not going towards the animals that he's trying to hunt. It's
Right.
coming in the opposite direction. So they don't smell him. They may sense he's there, but he's got the upper hand. So as he's coming around, I start seeing down the game drive trail more and more and more vehicles. And since I've been doing this literally since the 80s, I've seen an increase in probably the last at least 10, 15 years on more and more people going, but less etiquette towards overcrowding the animal. So here's this big old lion, and he's actually coming around a vehicle, and then sitting in the grassy knoll watching. And as he's all of a sudden just bolts. I mean, he just full speed is going at the back of the herd. And I could hear other vehicles where I could hear people, loudly saying something, and two vehicles honk. And I'm just like, oh my God, really? And so the lion had gotten right to the buffalo, and he was going for a small calf at the back of the herd. And one of the big ones, he's like, no, I'm not having this. So he just takes it and just, hits him with his horns and throws him back a little bit. And the lion just like, no, this isn't worth it. But we counted, and I've come to find out later, I counted at least 50 vehicles. That's way out of control. I mean, that's far and beyond out of control. I'd actually ask my guide, get me out of here. I can't handle this. So anyway, the next day, a friend of mine, he's also the medic for the Maasai. And so we had gone to the very good shots. Yeah.
Oh, there you
Um,
go. That's
that's what resulted in me talking to the Maasai Rangers. So you heard me talk about just a ton of people, they overcrowd everything else. After I'd spoke to him about, and I was very polite about how I did it, and I just mentioned this was out of all my years coming here, I've never experienced anything like that, and that was probably the worst thing I've probably ever seen. The next day, the next day on three different locations. Notice how there's a Ranger vehicle facing towards the other vehicles coming in. That
yes.
was the one who, as people would come up, he would regulate them. So, nope, you're at the end of the line, and what you don't see is uh, when we drive in, come to the left, probably about 50 yards up is where 15 lions had gotten a kill of a Cape buffalo. And so they would only let two vehicles in at a time. The ones near the kill would regulate your time. So you'd go in, enjoy the scene, but I mean, you got all these lions. I mean, you can hear the primal, you know,
Yeah.
just it's just amazing to see and to hear. And in your head, you're just like, you don't mess up here. So you take the shots and just enjoy the scene, and then they regulated you out. And this is still going on today. So I mean, there it is, just one person who I made an impact, and it made me feel just like, oh my God, I actually did it. It
So
really felt good.
I love so much that you did that. Like it's the do something attitude, right? Like you had to speak up and say something. From my point of view, um, I don't have access to the Rangers to that extent, at least not yet. I may soon. But the way that Wonderful Tanzania tries to address it, because it's our pet peeve too. Um, and like I said, in Tanzania, the areas are huge, but some different tour companies restrict the amount of distance that their drivers can cover in a day. So what happens is that you'll have multiple tour companies with hundreds of trucks that are all restricted to about the same 20-kilometer area. So that's when all of the overcrowding happens in a very centralized, part of the park. And we never want to be, our guests don't enjoy that. Nobody enjoys that. And the animals, it's not fair to them. So we have a policy within Wanderful Tanzania that if that's happening, we don't want any part of it. And Tanzania is such a gift. And I'm sure the other parks are too, but Tanzania, especially to me, you go around the next bend in the road. Now it's just you. Maybe you got 2-3 trucks in your group. It's just you. I can't tell you the number of scenes like what you're describing, Rob, that we've rolled up on. We're the only ones there because we didn't stick with the pack. We went off and found our own, interactions to be part of. And those are the magical moments, the moments that you realize you're the only ones on earth that witnessed that one thing, that one scene.
Right. Right.
And so, and by doing so, the guests have a better experience. They feel like they haven't contributed to any kind of pressure or discomfort to the animals. And so the quality of your company that you choose to safari with can make or break your experience too. So if you
Oh, big time.
choose a company like us that prioritize guest safety and comfort first, but immediately after that, animal safety and comfort as well, then I just think the whole experience gets elevated and you're actually traveling again with intention. You're not doing any harm, right, to those animals. So bravo to you for impacting the rangers to understand it's not fun for the tourists to be one of 100 trucks, and your pictures too. You're trying to take pictures of something and you get a bunch of wheels in the background of the other vehicles because they're completely surrounded. No, nobody wants to see that. That's kind of against the grain of the whole reason you go on safari, to be out in nature and to see the real thing, right? So thanks for speaking to that. The next thing I know, along the same lines as working with those rangers, the reason you have gotten to know them so well is because you have an active campaign going where you're trying to help provide them with much needed equipment, maybe some training, maybe some medical stuff, I think. So I think Heather's got some pictures that speak to those kinds of things. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. When we got to meet with the Rangers that day, I was with a friend of mine. His name's Colin Zukumbe, and he is the medic to the Maasai, and it's just him. And there's no ambulance, there's no vehicles. He just takes his motorcycle, and he gets an idea, or somebody tells him there's somebody hurt out in the bush or whatever, and he's a full-blown medic, highly educated. I mean, he's darn near a doctor, but he'll go out there and he'll treat these people. So we wanted to train the actual rangers themselves that are out there. So instead of having to wait for somebody to come out that may have that kind of education, we wanted to give that to them. So we spent almost 2 hours with the rangers going over not only basic first aid, but into advanced life saving, but also CPR. And one thing, when I was sitting there, I've worked with the rangers in Zambia, and so with the same thing with these guys, I noticed I was looking at their boots, and they all kind of caught that I was checking them out. And I said, I got a question for you guys. Are you guys issued your boots? And they said, no. And so I said, all right, that's where right there, those are the boots that I had gotten for the Rangers in Zambia. So I told the guys, all right, do me a favor. I want all of your names and your shoe sizes. And when I come back next year, we're going to do this. So this is one of those things that it truly hits my heart. And it's just like, these guys work hard out there, and they're not exactly paid a lot. It's, it's their life passion to take care of these animals. They don't get vacations or anything. It's not like a 9 to 5 job. They live out there. And the boots that I saw in Zambia, they were rubber boots, and figure, rubber boots, you're in 100+ degree weather. That's extremely bad on your feet. So these are the ones that I did in Zambia, and I'm going to do the same thing in Kenya. But I'd also brought out a first aid medical pack, a really nice one. And so when Collins opened it to give the course, they all saw that, and I just kind of shook my head. I said, "Don't tell me you guys don't have any equipment either." And he goes, "No, we don't have anything." And they've actually seen some of their brothers and you know, other family members or anything that's been hurt out in the bush bleed out. So it's
Yeah,
like, this is really an important thing
I think
for
there's some
me.
pictures of
Yeah.
that, Heather, if you want to rotate. Sorry to talk over you, Rob, but
Not that
not that.
one.
But so
But
yeah, some of these right here. There you are with the guides. Ah,
okay, perfect. Okay, this is when I was working in Zambia. All right, notice their boots. Look at how they're just basically like if you've ever been on a farm and they have those rubber, like calf high boots, and that's what they were wearing. And I'm like, this can't be, so that's why I worked hard, and I did all that myself. That was all my own money to get those boots, and it took a little while. But then when we got them out there, for me, I don't ever want any accolades or anything. It's just, here, man, you guys need this.
yeah.
So for me, it's a passion. And you can see that, I'm standing there. And one thing that people don't realize, the one standing next to me, that's Malice. That's a female. We call her the Ronda Rousey of the bush.
In
That,
in the first picture, the one that you're kind of pointing at, that's a woman, right?
yeah, that's her. So the whole time, when I'm talking to her, she's very stern and hearty. And when I finally got her to crack a smile, that's when I knew I got it. But
Oh, that's
bro,
awesome.
oh, it was. It made my whole day. And in this shot right here, when they all sat down for the pose, um, 99.9% anybody that's ever handled a weapon. Rule number one, that finger does not go on that trigger unless you're ready to pull it. And a
Right.
couple of the guys had their fingers on the trigger. I went, Alice, and she just snapped, looked at him. That's all it took. Those fingers just popped off, and it was just like, she's in control. And she actually is second in command.
That's
But you
awesome.
notice in the background, see those huts?
Yeah.
Those are all like a corrugated metal or anything. That's what they have to live in. And so that's why we're also working on getting them a larger, I mean, a huge, huge, huge tent, and make it to where they're like little areas and bunks and stuff so they can not have to live in all this doggone heat. So that's,
Bravo,
it's,
buddy. That's
thank you.
amazing. Yeah, that's
It-
amazing. And if you see in the foreground of the picture that's up there too, it's just a whole the one that she just had is just a whole bunch of kinds of supplies and things. So
Yes, those are other medical packs, tents, things like that. So when they are out in the bush, they have something to, emergency packs to take care of themselves and have a little bit of supplies, whether it's a little bit of water or like rations, for food or whatever to get them by to get them back. So
wow,
they're
so
taken out
great.
in the morning to a
Wow.
certain area, and then they're picked up a few days later.
Yeah, yeah. That just bravo. That's wonderful. And
Thank
I
you.
know that you and I have had a lot of discussions around this. And I hope that in 2025, that Wonderful Tanzania is in a position to help you incur some of the costs, because I know that you have some ongoing work with the folks in Kenya that you just mentioned. We're going to check on Tanzania too to see if there's anything that their rangers need in the Serengeti or the other parks. We don't know where this is going yet, but when we do, there will certainly be an announcement on my website. Rob is working with an organization called Conservation Warriors.
Global Conservation Force.
That's the big organization, but what is your organization with Collins? It's Conservation Warriors, right?
Correct, Conservation Warriors. And
So I
for
think I've
that,
got a graphic of both of those. Maybe at the end, Heather, we can put both of
there we
those.
go. Perfect.
Got 'em. Wonderful. Yeah. So this is the group that Rob is working closely with right now. And then on a larger scale, there's an organization called Global Conservation Force that is, a legit full-on charitable organization. And so, Rob, just since we're on the topic of these, I was going to save this for later, but if somebody's watching this program and they have the passion to help support animals, anti-poaching, blah, 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 all the stuff that you are helping to bring awareness to, how does one tell a good organization to support from, maybe big ones, but the big ones might be really top heavy and not a lot of the money goes to the actual cause. Like, so how, what kinds of things do they look for when they're looking at different charitable organizations?
Yeah, really look at is there a large board of people? In other words, let's say I'm just throwing countries out there. Could be Europe, could be America. So you have this large board of people. That's not a charity. Those people are working for a profit. In other words, all those people on those boards are being paid. So all that money that is, supposedly supposed to go out to help an area or help the rangers, educate the rangers, supply the rangers, and all of that. How come that bulk of the money is not going there? So I guess what the best thing to do is really dig deep before you put your hard-earned dollars that you really want to help. Look hard at the type of organization it is. There's plenty of them. I don't want to bash anybody or anything like that, but there's a lot of big names out there that say that they're, doing conservation and everything else. And some of them I've actually found out are linked into trophy hunting, which is number one, above all, my hugest hatred of all. But that's my
Amen.
thing.
Okay, but you've checked out, like we've got the one on the screen for global, and this is something.
Okay, the Global Conservation Force, they're basically based out of Port Elizabeth, South Africa. So they do a lot of work in South Africa and mostly the eastern side and spreading themselves out a little bit more as they grow more and more and more. Now they actually have a canine team, a horse riding team. Their rangers are highly educated, highly trained. They go through a major boot camp that let's say they get 10 or 15 people coming in. If you get two or three or make it, that's the real rangers. and it's far from easy. And they could be they work all the way up into Kruger and other, major name parks, where if there's intel of possible poachers or anything else like that, they move right now. They could be traveling anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. The second that they get there, their boots are on the ground. They're moving to where this animal may be, mostly rhinos, but also everything from pangolin to giraffes to elephants to all kinds of other endangered species. But they'll have, let's say, hypothetically, a rhino. So they'll go out there with a helicopter, find the rhino, get up over him, dart him, bring him down, and then they have what's called a chainsaw team. So what they do is they go in, because if the rhino usually goes down in the bush area, they'll cut away all the bush, cover the rhino's eyes and everything to get him calmed down, and then they'll take a blood sample, a DNA sample, and then they'll also humanely remove the horn, and that horn goes straight to the government. It doesn't go for any kind of profit or anything else. And these animals are highly watched over. Then a tracking collar, or in this case, it goes around their ankle, and then we can actually track these animals and do more of a statistic to find out where their range is and what they're doing and how their breeding situations are. And even in some of them, when they'll actually let them keep the horn, but they'll take what's called a hole saw. It looks like, it looks like a hole, and they drill into the horn, and then they'll put in a tracking device, and then they'll cover it all back up, and you can't even tell it's there. But then they can track where this animal may be. So he may be headed towards the edge of you know, a park or something like that. They don't know where a borderline is. So this way we can watch over them and have the real opportunity to protect them.
That's wonderful. So by them, in the first case, when they humanely remove the horn, once the rhino loses its horn, it's not attractive to poachers anymore, because literally these animals will be killed for nothing more than their horn. They'll chop it off.
Yeah, that's usually other countries with, ancient history of, medicines and things like that. And it's been a scientifically proven fact. It doesn't do a doggone thing for you. It doesn't give any
Right.
kind of medicinal purpose, or, I mean, I'll leave that alone. But it's nothing more than the creatine in your own fingernails. So it's like, what you think is, going to do something for you for a rhino, so go cut your fingernails and grind it down. It's the same thing.
Right, right. Okay. And then otherwise, the tracker being put in with the hole saw, that's so they can monitor the movement, and then watching the movement. If they're getting too close to one of the border areas where the poachers have more access to them, then they can go and round them back into the farther into the park again and protect them that way, or be with them. Right.
And also possibly get to the poachers and make an arrest and then bring them in. But
Got you.
remember, the Rangers aren't out there just doing that. They're
Yeah.
also looking for snares, and all kinds of other situations. I mean, these guys are, it's amazing all that they do. I
So
mean, it's
I just want to comment again, like in all the safaris I've been on, I've seen one snared animal in
mm,
Tanzania, right, which is where my biggest focus is. Just one snared animal. It was a snared zebra, and it was heartbreaking, right? And I just am super proud of Tanzania, because I think they used to have a huge. I know they used to have a huge problem with elephant poaching and other big game poaching. Um, Now I know there are still parks where people can pay to get a permit to go trophy hunting, which I agree with you is like the most disgusting thing on the planet. But in large, the actual illegal poaching industry, whatever you want to call it, all of the illegal poaching has been quashed to a large extent. I'm sure it still happens, but not at all on the order that it used to. So through conservation efforts like the ones that you're talking about, I know that certain countries are starting to make a headway with slowing that down or reversing it. And I do think the numbers of some of these beautiful species are starting to come back in certain parks around East Africa.
sure.
This was just the only place I can speak to. So thank you for that. The Power of One Tree project that you're working on and your photography. Can you talk to us about that? There we go.
Yes, that's actually threefold, and that is put together through another entity that I work with out of South Africa, mainly the Cape Town and Johannesburg area, called Earth. And the gentleman that runs that is also associated with Collins in Kenya. So there's a huge deforestation problem in Africa where, remember, these people don't have anything. I mean, literally, they don't have anything.
Right.
And so they're cutting the trees down to burn them to make charcoal. Then they can sell the charcoal. But now that we have such a huge problem with that, that we've started a seedling and replanting area. So when we go to the schools and talk to the kids about all this, then they can take some of this tree, the saplings home and plant them around their homes and things like that. And so then we're starting to, not only educate, but then we're actually planting the trees. So this is, as you can see there, it's a huge project. And it was so beautiful when I was in Kenya the last time when we went and talked to these kids. I was just blown out on how intelligent they were, how articulate they were, and that's Collins over there to the right. That's also the medic that I was telling you about. Collins is awesome. I love the guy.
Yeah.
But he puts a lot of time and effort into this, and I feel privileged to be able to be part of this also. So I mean, like I said, when we went to the schools, it was just incredible.
Now, are these the same school kids that you told me about the songbirds? They're doing a songbird project too. Is this tied together or that's two separate things?
It's two separate things. So the kids, when we were there, we were talking about all this, and then they had mentioned, well, by the way, we also do bird conservation here. We're just like, oh, talk to me. What do you got? And so around the small campus, in all these little designated areas, they had built little like tree feeders and little bird houses so the birds could, feed and breed and everything else. But one thing that really got me is when they said that they love the songs in the morning and how beautiful the birds would sound in the mornings. So we went around the whole campus and they were really proud, of how they built these things and the progress and everything. I was just blown out, and then we
That's
went and
that's
you know,
beautiful.
we got a chance to meet with the principal and hear him talk about how proud he was of the kids, and
Yeah.
you know, it was a blast. So
So the last couple things I want to get to is I think a really
there's
cool
the kids.
is that they're the kids. Oh my God. I've had similar experiences of going to some schools in Tanzania, and it's just an experience you never forget when you interact with the kids and you know that that's their future. It's and then you hear their English skills are coming along really well, and I don't know, it just warms my heart. Before we get to this particular rhino elephant story that I asked you to bring at the end of this whole
I
thing,
love this one.
one more project that ties into the elephant part of it, though, and that is some geofencing for elephant protection.
Oh, biofencing. So
Bio.
biofencing, what it is it's only being done in Tanzania and in Zambia. 100% success rate. So what that is where you've got crops. Let's say a farmer's putting crops out, things like that. It could be mangoes, it could be corn, it could be anything.
Right.
But who else likes to eat? The elephants. And who gets the bad end of the stick of that? The
Yeah.
elephant. So
Yeah.
if he comes in and he destroys crops, those people are going to take him out. I hate
Yeah.
to put it that way. So what a biofence is a bunch of beehives. I mean, a bunch of beehives linked together by a wire. So you got one here, one here, one here, one here. And so when the elephant comes by and he hits that beehive, all these bees come out. Well, I didn't know this until I really got into it. Elephants hate bees with a passion.
Yes, they
So
do.
so they won't cross that line. You've got all these bees, and they even though they may want that crop, they're not going over there. So it's like I say, it's 100% success rate. Now you've not only taught the people how to, protect their crops, now they're able to harvest the honey and also make a living for themselves. The only downfall to all of this is one of my favorite animals of all time in all of Africa is the honey badger. And there's no stopping him. He wants it, he's gonna get it. So I mean,
Let the jokes begin. Everybody's seen the honey
oh
badger,
boy.
I think. So that's beautiful. Number one, I participate in something called the Pollen Project, right? So it's all the pollinating animals. It's an organization to protect bees. and other insects that do the pollination. So right there, it also helps them with their crops and the propagation of their crops by having all the bees. But you're right, elephants can't stand bees. They will run from a bee. It's
Right,
really funny
right.
to watch. So on that note, I know that just recently you were on safari and that you came across, and we're going to start with this picture here of these beautiful rhinos, which I think are your favorite animal in the world. And I'm just going to have you just tell the story. There's a little video that's going to come in here and whatever, but why don't you just like put the exclamation point on this whole session here by telling the story.
Yeah, I will say this. I love my chubby unicorns. So we're out on this drive, and it's absolutely beautiful area. And we'd seen a few single, rhinos here and there, but then we saw what's called a small crash. A group of rhinos are called a crash. So we see these, and we're just sitting back and on, enjoying the beauty of them, and you can see how close we were. And so they come across, walk over, and they're just grazing and having a good old time. And this big one that you see, at the front part of the picture, he decides he wants to come and pay us a visit. All casual, no, nothing. And we're just sitting there all quiet watching. And he comes up to the driver's side and rubs up against the side and takes out the driver's side mirror. And this is the part that cracks me up. The driver just turns and looked at us as casual as can be, and he goes, I just replaced that. And so I'm like, oh my God, that was so funny. And the rhino didn't care. He was just, rubbing up against it. But how calm our guide was speaks volumes of that professional guy and how he handled the situation. He get excited. He's like, I just replaced it. So he's like, now I got to do it again.
Yeah.
So notice down after they took off, went out into the bush. Notice how the road up ahead veers off to the right. That's where the next part comes in. So what that was, and okay, this part, if you can kind of see where you can maybe see down where we see a couple feet there, bingo.
There you go.
Okay. We were actually so where you saw in that first one, we were at the top of that hill and we were looking down. We didn't dare, go down there. But in the beginning, all of these that you see, these elephants weren't there. It was just two females and a couple of the calves. But you could tell that that there was more elephants up on that's a whole hillside. And there was elephants literally everywhere in there. I've never seen that many. So we we're just sitting there, taking our pictures, enjoying the scene. And one of the babies decides to run across the road here, and he trumpets. And I'm not even kidding you. I don't even know how to describe this where you could vividly put it in your head. But literally that whole entire hillside came alive. I mean, there was at least 20 elephants. And I mean, you could hear them coming down, not trampling or anything like that, just moving, towards the babies and all that. And you could physically hear not twigs, full blown trees snapping. I mean, that snap was just like, wow, I mean, you just imagine the power. And then they all came around and just engulfed the babies. And I mean, everything was, pretty mellow the whole time. But then all of a sudden they started coming up towards us. And that's when it got interesting. So what you're going to see in this video is now they're at the top of the hill and we're rolling back because you can't start your vehicle because if you do, that can spook them and they'll bum rush you. They'll just crush you to death. But see, you see the big monarchs and the way they're coming at you, you're seeing how they move and their heads are moving and they're just coming. Yeah, it was wild. I mean, it was funny because our guide was like, this isn't exactly a good situation because we've got them coming at us, even though it's not really a problem, but we have the rhinos behind us. So it's like, okay, this is getting interesting. So you'll notice that we're still rolling back. You can hear the brakes squeaking. And we're all just, staying calm. It's just like, okay, what's going to happen? Well, at the last moment, and I'm trying to just drag this out, a second, but you'll see them just all of a sudden, there they go. They just veered off into the bush and went and had a nice day. But we got the thrill of a lifetime to have them, coming right at you. And, they knew we were there big time, but it was just,
I love the elephant walk. It looks like they're dancing, as they
it
go.
is.
And I could literally, this is my favorite animal on the planet. And I could literally watch a herd of elephants all day long. If that was the only animal I saw in a day, I'd be just fine. And if you give them a pool of water to play in,
Oh my God.
it's endlessly entertaining because the babies, as you know, Rob, have no control over their snorkel. I call it a snorkel. I think most people that are adults call it a tusk. I mean a trunk, but their snorkel, and they wiggle it all over the place, and it's just endlessly entertaining. But I have mad respect for these animals because of how tight their family units are and the care that they take of each other. And that was depicted in a couple of pictures ago when you saw that whole herd, and right in the middle are the two babies standing there. And that's just the protection of all of the senior members of the group protecting those babies. And so anyway, I love to see that all of these conservation efforts that you're participating in and tracking are doing something to protect these animals over their tusks. I just can't emphasize a horn and a tusk that does nothing really for anybody are decimating these animals. So it takes people like you and these other organizations we've been talking about to highlight it and bring it to people's attention. People that may never make it to Africa can still care that these beautiful creatures are being wiped out unnecessarily, and they can throw some money behind it or get something going that benefits the people trying to stop this, and then ultimately benefits the animals. And she's going back through these pictures that you shared with us today, and I just think they're just brilliant. So that's it. Do you have anything else you want to add to this? Because I think this has been a really, really beautiful view of everything you're doing project-wise, calling attention to the things that still need attention paid to them, but then also just highlighting these amazing moments that you've had on safari. Anything you want to add?
Yes, one thing that I'd really like to add is I would very much look forward to working with Wanderful Tanzania and Susie. I mean, besides my passion in so many of the other places, to get to work with, oh my God, that's funny. Oh, that's a ride all of
Stop and
itself.
talk about
That was
that.
Chi-Chi.
Yeah,
Oh
I
my
have
gosh,
to Chi-Chi, and I didn't get the whole video, but you can tell the story.
that's in Zambia, and we did a clip there on conservation and how I got there was a riot. So figure I've been flying darn near 30 hours, and we get to the camp, and I know the area well. Right behind there's the South Luangwa River, and there's crocodiles in there, but there's a bunch of hippos also. Well, that night that I'd gotten there, we were all tired, and I traveled with two other friends of mine. A friend, it was him and his mom, and so they put me in my chalet, and they put them in theirs, and mine had two beds, and theirs had one. And all of a sudden, here comes Chi Chi, this absolutely beautiful black woman. She goes, "I gotta take you to the honeymoon suite." I'm like, "Okay." It's just cracking up. So she was just being her, and so we could just banter back and forth and have such a good time. And she goes, "We're going to get along great." And the way that these people are over there, their hospitality is so, it's just beautiful. And so she, put us in the right rooms and everything. Come on now, come on over to have dinner and everything once you guys have gotten established. And we did, and the meals were just crazy off the charts.
Yeah.
And so that was the next morning. And I'd asked her, hey, we do a short video clip, and I'll prop you guys and everything else. And she goes, oh, hold on. And so I thought she had, some work to do or something. Nope, she had to go do her hair, get her hair foofed up and everything else. And she's just as cute as could be. I loved her.
She looks adorable.
She was a riot.
I've had a couple of guys that I could name by name at different camps that just they warm your heart, right? Like you have a connection with them. And then just know that when you're at these camps, these people are out there for 4 and 5 months at a time, away from their families,
Right.
making very low wages. If you are ever lucky enough to go on a safari, please, out of the goodness of your heart, tip these people well, because they will knock the world over for you and bring the biggest smile to your face. And the food and nothing's easy. They're in the middle of a place that have no running water, no, all of these things, and they still deliver service to you every day with a huge smile on their face. And so I love that story about how she had to go do her hair. I think that's fantastic. So
well, the one place we did stay in Zambia, that was the first night. And then a friend of mine that I've known for a long time went to his camp. And I kid you not, Susie was teasing me. She goes, oh my gosh, you were so bushy. I mean, because the food and everything when they bring it out was, I'm not even kidding, it was 5-star big time.
yeah.
And so they would lay it all out, and then they would stand at the front of the table and present the food, how it was prepared and everything else. You're just like, oh my God, this is amazingly beautiful. And don't think for a moment that that was like highly expensive. Because the way I do my safaris, I mean, because I've been doing it for so long, is like Susie was saying to you, take your time, do your research, and you can get a lot of this for really, really good rates. But
Yeah,
look at the time of year you're going to go, because all the camps will have a seasonal uh, rate situation. So just kind of plan, how many you're going to go, what your thought process is, what you want to do, and just have fun with it most of all. Because
better
when you get
yet,
there, it's a blast.
just call Wanderful Tanzania and we'll take care of all that.
That's who I'm going with next time.
There's 1,000 moving parts with the safari, and we just truly make it an easy button for people. And very much what Ra was talking about, the delicious food presented. You arrive at a camp and they hand you a little cloth to wipe your face off, and a cocktail or maybe a non-alcoholic, like a juice drink when you get there. They treat you really well. And you're right, there are seasonal price differences. And so we will work with anybody who wants to go to meet their budget, the time available that they have, and the season will determine, or what they want to see will determine the season that they travel in, or they can join one of the groups that I personally lead over there every year. But we have a ball, and Rob alluded to the fact that I think for sure you're coming with me next August, right?
That's a given.
We're hoping to do some ranger contributions for the rangers during that trip. And then I've got a group of people that are going on a beautiful safari during what we call baby bloom season in February. But I don't know how much time off work Rob's boss is going to give them. So anyway, buddy, just know you're welcome on all of my safaris anytime. And I thank you so much for this beautiful day that you just spent telling us about your projects. I wish you all the
It's been
best with all that.
100% my pleasure. And I honestly, I cannot wait to go on safari with you.
There you go. Get the checkbook out though, because there's some zeros for all the work I do for you. Look at
That's
his
not a
face. He's
problem.
like in stunned silence right now. So if anybody wants to travel with me and Wanderful Tanzania, just go to our website, wanderfultanzania.com, or you can email me at susan@wanderfultanzania.com. We would welcome you onto one of our group safaris, or I'd be happy to do a private or customized safari for anybody who's interested. And Rob, thanks again so much for helping out today and for being our guest on Wanderful Webinars. Thanks, guys.
It's been my privilege. Thank you.
See you guys next month.